Hello, everyone. I just recapitulated with Katharina. It was nearly 5 years. I was in Vienna physically for a very interesting conference, the Digital Synesthesia Conference. And actually our exchange with Katharina goes back to 2013. So there's really a history going on, and I really treasure our communication. So thank you so much for contributing today. My topic, artistic research on the themes of climate change. I quoted with ice melts faster when there's water. Let me just screen share and we can start right away. And sound is shared. So, can you see my PDF?
Yes, we can see it perfectly.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Maybe in the meantime. So.
Yes. Oh, that's the website. Yeah, now it's
Wonderful.
a PDF.
I might in my talk, I might switch back from presentation to the browser and back, and whenever you might not see what I see, please tell me, shout or chat or whatever. So thank you so much for taking time to listen to my projects and thoughts and what keeps me busy and sweating. And ironically, we actually might get cold seeing that image. It is actually the Arctic, and it has to do with an artist that I will talk later on about. So ice melts faster when there's water. It has to do with the Arctic. As Katharina said, that my art historian, art theoretical, curatorial research has to do with Art Laboratory Berlin. Maybe if you allow me just to share a few parameters with you about format and discourse. So we are, as Katharina said, since 2006, but more decisively since 2011, 13, very much discuss themes through hybrid art that are very current issues. So we try to understand the complex 21st century by showing interesting complex artworks. As I said, artistic research is a big format that we very much follow, and we work over longer periods of time with international artists for projects to evolve or to show them again and to invite them to conferences. And we have various formats, not only the classical exhibition, actually workshops is getting more and more, seminars and conferences, and that means we are really radical interdisciplinary. No conference with only humanities or only sciences or only artists. So we want to actually bring everyone at the table. The life science is something that we have concentrated very much in for the last 5 to 8 years. And with that theme, art and life sciences, we very much favor, and this goes back to 2015, philosophical movement of posthumanism. And we developed the series Non-Human Subjectivities, of which I will also present you one artistic position today. And it is very much related to decentering the human from the attention, from our perception, give way to more than human agency and sentience. And maybe Anthropocene I should have put in quotation marks, because my partner Christian Delutz and I, we are very critical regarding that term, because it is really ironical, because it has the anthropo, the human, again in the term. And when we want to come away from it, I would propose to use the Harawaiian Cthulhu instead, but we can discuss this later. Let me jump into this. I will today, I heard presentations last time and with Claudia Schnuck, and I really liked the discourse of art and science collaborations. And maybe in the course of my talk, I will also refer to this, or maybe at the end. But today I would suggest I would like to present you concrete artistic positions. And maybe by looking inductively, we can unfold the complexities that the artists deal with when they work on change, on topics of climate change, with what technological approach challenge they have to do, they have to deal with, or actually also not technological, but also scientific or biotechnological. I'd like to start going back to what I said already, to our series, Non-Human Subjectivities, 2016-17. And we evolved then a series, Non-Human Agents, and even in 2018, 19, 20, and even today, we very much deal with that topic. And we started in a concept from the small to the vast. So we started with microbiome and the phenomenon that it's not only us, it's not only I, but it's us, a multitude of microorganisms and us living together. Then we went to cognition and intelligence of animals. And then we went to also animals and machines. And here we are with Alinta Kraut. She is an Australian artist coming from storytelling and narration, so from literature and art, and also new media. So we invited her to present a totally new project, Undermine. And what she contributed was this was a very interesting project, because she was creating stories of 4 different animals that are under the threat of extinction. So she would take found footage, as you can see here, graphical material from the 19th or 20th century. She would draw herself. She would make collage montage. And what came then is she did computer animations, and she used a mixture of frame by frame animation, time-based code-generated animation, and digital drawing. And due to their computer-generated nature, the original interactive versions will never play the same way twice. So there are conversation between the artist who creates the imagery and sets the parameters, and the computer which executes those parameters. Accompanying sound is also created by the artist using the mixture of field recordings, data-generated sound, postmodern notation techniques for composition. So, and with this, that was really amazing. She created a computer game for these chosen animals. It was the microbat, the rock lizard, the wood lice, and the Kaimanawa wild horse from New Zealand. And so I think that was a really amazing idea to put playfully the visitor, the recipient, the viewer into, I mean, it was actually at the borderline of ironic, if not even cynical. The viewer could play oneself into different levels. And of course, with the accelerated climate change, for instance, the rise of temperature or the rise of humidity, it would be a big, big threat for the animals. For instance, echolocating microbats, they are specifically chosen are echolocating microbats from temperature climates such as Germany. This piece refers to research into how climate change is affecting the physics of sound. So changes in temperature and humidity will see shifts in bats' abilities to echolocate. But now, global warming in particular has massive and devastating impact on bat prey detection. As scientists of sensory ecology group of Max Planck Institute for Ornithology, together with international colleagues, found out, for instance, that global warming, I quote, can thus directly affect the prey detection ability of individual bats and indirectly their interspecific interactions with competitors and prey, end of argument. So she was very much researching, and this is, I think, a good moment to explain artistic research, that she would not only create works by an idea of what is the threat of extinction of certain animals, but she would really go into scientific paper and make big research. I'd like to change into a short video. If there's no sound, please tell me.
I'm here in Berlin, all the way from Australia. This exhibition is called Undermine, and it's part of Art Laboratory Berlin's Subjectivities series. Generally, when we think about effects of climate change on animals, the first thing that comes to mind are habitat destruction or death from heat stroke. But I'm interested in presenting to a mainstream public some of those lesser known effects, so namely how climate change affects and will affect the senses. Undermine is a solo exhibition of 5 video art pieces and 1 large interactive work using a custom-built control system reminiscent of arcade game machines. Each work combines hand-drawn imagery and frame-by-frame animation with JavaScript, and these pieces run as computer applications. Much of what you see is time-based, and the computer makes some of the decisions as to how these pieces end up looking. I hope they look somewhat like moving abstract paintings that change with time. The interactive piece works like a timeline for climate change, from current and ideal conditions up to catastrophic conditions. This choice is made by the viewer, and they can also play within the scene. In this way, it's a bit like a game or a digital narrative of creatures heading towards potential destruction. In a way, each creature being looked at here has something in common. They're suffering a loss of sensorial perception, or a loss of place and home. When you lose your ability to navigate and understand your world, there are worrying consequences that echo throughout the biodiversity.
Go back. So I think this was very short, but it could still show us an approach which we can also very much understand in the context of care, the aesthetics of care. So Alinka Kraut is an artist who particularly is interested in the more than human care. And I think this is interesting that she chooses the format of computer game or animation, interactive animation, to create awareness. Let's move on. Artist Robertinabianic, based in Ljubljana, Slovenia, is also very interesting artist. She is actually interested throughout, like a red thread in her artistic practice, for water and marine ecosystems. So the importance of sounds in marine communication systems is very dear to her, as well as the effects of human interventions in acoustic environments of aquatic ecosystems. And her work involves close collaboration with marine biologists, so that is her domain of artistic research. And she works and has worked together with international marine biologists from all over the world. And she utilizes a multitude of artistic media, primarily interactive sound installations and live performances. So the still that I'm showing you here is from her very complex and fascinating project, Aurelia 1+ Hertz Porto Viva Generator, that actually I think before last year in Ars Electronica it was again to be seen, and it is from 2014, and we showed parts like video documentation, and then also later on upon that she built a performance. And fascinating is the jellyfish as one of the recurring themes of animal topic in her work is very interesting, because again it puts this human into place, becoming aware of that 5 million years old animals are here in front of us. I think it charmingly decenters the human from the attention. And also it is interesting for her to work with jellyfish because of living organism and bringing life to simple machines. And then this work also had the idea and topic of the interaction, the interface of animal and machine. This is actually in our exhibition that we had her at Alt Laboratory in 2016, and we had Aurelia 1 plus Hertz as a projection, but then actually a new work was, and the first time it was exhibited in 2016 here in Berlin, Aquatocene Subaquatic Quest for Serenity. And you see here the installation Subaquatic Aquatocene Soundscape. And yeah, I'm probably biased, but I'm still saying it's a fascinating project where she brings into a sound installation her artistic research on different water coastals here in Europe. So she made subaquatic sound recordings in places like Roscoff in France, in Bergen in Norway, Izmir in Turkey, Dubrovnik in Croatia, and Koper in Slovenia. And so it is 5 audio pieces with headphones, a subtle black and white projection of flowering water. And it is a whole new research. And the interesting thing is that the formats are also merging. So she also takes part in performances, and she plays and creates a whole new synthesis by playing the sound. And that means that she has produced vinyls of the subaquatic recordings. And then with turntable, she actually plays and mixes the recordings. So, and to understand this project from a larger context, we have to say that for her, for Robertina and her artistic understanding and practice, that she is concerned with human underwater sound pollution. And so the artistic media chosen are various: interactive sound installation, live performances, vinyls. In this project, she has an approach most innovative. She spotlights the non-human perspective in which the anthropocentric dilemma fully unfolds. And I quote, "Sound is the main communication tool for most marine animals and plants that dwell in the deep darkness of the world's oceans and seas," the artist says. And I continue quoting her, "Despite widespread knowledge of certain aquatic sounds, like those produced by animals such as whales, the public is predominantly not aware that the underwater soundscape is as rich as our terrestrial one." I think this is also a recurring theme that basically she really dedicates of all the worlds that we are surrounded of, the underwater world. And then here in 2019, when we had a group exhibition, Water Ecologies, with Kat Austin, Mary Magic, and Farah Beluso, we invited again Robertinabianic, and then she brought the vinyls along. And we would have to meet another time to share the sound. For today, for Robertina, I just wanted to make you curious and brought visuals along. But to go to another artistic position, which is not far from here, because that was in March 2019. And at that very table, together with Robertina, sat Kat Austin. And Kat Austin is, I think this is also really fascinating to think through the perspective of when scientists become artists. Kat Austin has a PhD in chemistry, and she worked very many years as a journalist on climate change. And then she meandered over to arts, and now she is working fully as an artist. And I think if we wanted to understand artistic research, hybrid arts, and climate change, is really a very interesting artist to explore. And we know her for many years, and then we invited her for water ecologies in spring 2019. And what is interesting with Kat, so she melds disciplines, creating sculptures, installations, and she also composes and performs music. She has also classical music background. And with chemistry as a background, her practice is underpinned by extensive research in theory, driven by a motivation to explore how to move towards a more socially and environmentally friendly future. I think with Kat, we can definitely say that her main sentence that drives her artistic projects is, how can we raise more awareness and empathy for climate change? She is also at Art Lab Berlin active member of our group DIY Hack the Punke. Maybe after my presentation, if the time allows, I can show you a little bit about that. And it's literally, we are artists and scientists and theoreticians to hack our river, which is not far from Art Lab Berlin's event space. And also, and this is also interesting for Kat, what you see here, she has technological equipment to research the salinity of water or other, and she would hack these machines. And then she would actually create sound and performances. Here we have the photo that you have probably seen with the announcement for my talk today. And here we are, and we come closer to the quote. Ice melts faster when there's water, in a second. Kat was invited by Scott's Polar Institute, and that was really special, for a residence in the Arctic, in the northern Canadian islands, the Baffin Islands. And it was so intense and existential for her, she did not even want to come back. So luckily she came back and produced very interesting artworks. This is actually not a documentary, this is her own photograph. And here she is recording terrestrial and water recordings. And then what she did numerous, she is really also from the format, she's really meandering herself through different formats. She has then produced the very impressive project, The Matter of the Soul. And it has different formats. And I think this photo shows it quite wonderful. In the background, you see it's symphony, it's a video installation about an hour long on the basis of classical symphony, with video footage and recorded sound footage of her journey. And in the right of this photograph, you can see cassettes where she has the symphony, The Matter of the Soul, recorded, or parts of it. And then also that red symbol, actually, that has very much to do with crystalline structure and also chemical reactions of water. And so in that piece, The Matter of the Soul, Kat Austin examines the impact of climate change in the Canadian high Arctic through sound, composition, sculpture, and performance. And it is her audiovisual installation that also I did not bring recordings today. I wanted to make you curious for another moment to listen into. But I can say here that it shows sequences of her travels by plane or sea view of views of water and ice, complemented by found footage. The compositions contain field recordings of acidity, salinity affected by Arctic ice melt using pH and conductivity meters altered to make sound. There are samples from interviews with visitors to and inhabitants of Baffin Islands. And this is also interesting. And I learned with this project that the climate change is, of course, not only an ecological phenomenon, but it has so much to do with economy, with capitalism. And she, in this project, melded these two poles very ideally together. Actually, coming from chemistry, she would call her different parts of the symphony biphasic, concentration, dissipation, multiplication. And while she was there in the Baffin Islands, she would speak with locals, and she would speak on the ship with the scientists. There were also a few tourists allowed to travel along, and there was a few very rich tourists, and it was such a clash of culture for her. And very interested for her was to speak to the locals and Inuits in the northern Canadian islands, and what climate change has a devastating impact for them, for living conditions. And now we come to the title of my talk, Ice Melts Faster When There's Water. And I'd like to read the explanation, which I was getting from Kat Austin here. So it is something told to Kat by an Inuk trainee elder in Nunavut. And she promised anonymity, and so it cannot be more specific. But she said they were discussing the impact of industrialization on the region. Companies operating in the Arctic are powerful and are lobbying for shipping routes to open earlier and earlier in the year. Campaigns by locals have managed to temporarily avert this in some areas, but the pressure of increased industrialization and exploitation of the Arctic, made more accessible due to the climate emergency, is growing. So I think that was, I don't want to go into too much into metaphorical rhetorics, but I think that's only the tip of the iceberg of the whole problem. And you find a lot of material on our website and on the internet in general. I look on my watch. We continue and we move ahead in time, and we come to the year 2020. This was a project we did under harsh circumstances with the corona pandemic in Berlin. At some point, we could have it open to a restricted amount of visitors. And we were happy, and we even had even more intense conversations probably with that. And I'd like to present you two artists of this big group show, Camille Diary's New Artistic Positions on Motherhood, Life and Care. Mary Magic and Sonia Levy, I'd like to present you from altogether 11 artists. And just to focus on the artists that I chose, I'd like to just only very shortly say that the 9 artworks by 11 female and non-binary artists in that exhibition concentrated of possible new forms and extended forms and thinkings of what means actually M/otherhood, or what does it mean also to care. So here we are again in the aesthetics of care. And we had together with the exhibition a conference with all the presented artists and scholars from the humanities and the sciences. The whole conference of one day from the 26th of September is fully online available. And also, before I come to closely talk about Mary Magic and Sonia Levy, I just wanted to point this out because Katharina was asking me to also really tell about Art Laboratory Berlin in a format and why and how we do what we do. And so it probably comes with reason that I'm curating with a background of art theory and art history and very much interested in research and artistic research. So what you see here are so-called source books, folders, binders that we always do per artist, a whole folder with a lot of material, papers, articles, background information, very basic, or sometimes also like low, upper and highly sophisticated, but we try to share our research, and we also try to respond to the complexities of themes that we offer a broad public who are most of the time neither microbiologists nor marine biologists nor specialists in all these complex fields that the artists address and are very experienced in, by the way. So you see that we have a lot of material at stake and always available. Oh yes, so I actually will continue with Sonia, or maybe I will actually later on actually come back to her. Yes, I come back to Sonia. I have, because then I can go back to the film that I wanted to show from Sonia. I start with Mary. Mary was also present in our Water Ecologies group exhibition in 2019. We also invited her for the Non-Human Agents Conference in 2017. And then actually we had her, and this very, I know I'm biased, and this very impressive artwork, Milik Bersama Recombinant, so actually it's called Recombinant Commons, that she produced while she was a Fulbright stipend a few years back in Indonesia, Java, in the very interesting cultural city Yogyakarta in southern Java. And it is all about a river, so here we stay aquatic. And so the installation is an outgrowth of an artistic research project, River Gynecology, which was the result of 10-month Fulbright residency in 2019. Both the residency and the artistic research project have their origins in the participation of Bacteria Lab in 2014. And you have to say that Mary Magic, with an artist, new media background, but also has very much an interest in activities and knowledge in life sciences, and also very much interested in hacking science tools, and also like hack knowledge for opening up to a broader, to share knowledge with a broader society. So she explores the hormonal outcomes of water pollution through diverse media. Not least via hybrid workshops. She utilizes both artistic strategies and DIY protocols. So she stresses the importance of Life Patch Collective. Life Patch Collective, they are based in Yogyakarta. And they use art, science, and technology workshops to involve the local communities in finding solutions for environmental and social problems. And I think this is, again, a tip of the iceberg of a big discourse where we can just say, I think the pandemic also showed it, that Europe, we have to open up and learn from Southeast Asia, and not only from that part of the world. I think it's very much time to step out of Eurocentrism. I have to be very outspoken, and we can just only learn from art science groups like Life Patch. And Mary is actually one who opened up. So the installation, I show you a detail here, the river of Yogyakarta, which she cartographed and worked for her project. So the installation is including living biomaterial of several elements. The two wall, the vast wall pieces that we just saw. And here we have the oyster mycelium on the river. It has a sort of a bioremediation aspect. And this, okay, I can show later on the, excuse me, can I go back? Yeah, I wanted to say the two vast wall pieces on both exhibition walls, we could understand them like objets trouvés at eye level. It's numerous pieces of garbage that she collected from the river, tins, paper cups, rusty nails from the river with the name Chode. And she texted to latex, and so she wanted to show how the people would still pollute the river, but also live from the river. So it's the conundrum that it's very toxic. And it is a whole circle that goes with working with the river. And it's and then the bioremediating petri dishes I showed you, filled with agar-dyed Remasol blue, a textile dye referencing the role of the textile industry in both Yogyakarta's economy and the pollution of the Chode River. And on this blue river, there are also 20 petri dishes containing remediates both agar from life, oyster mushroom. That was actually also talking about curatorial care and life art. This is another chapter. Then the video is in the very typical media aesthetics of Mary Magic, where she thinks also about the water pollution and the climate change and the harmonic turbulences going on, actually. So her approach is that the binary system of sexes is very much outdated, basically. This is, in a way, it's a whole discourse, actually, where she also embraces thinkers like Karin Barad, and of queering, molecular queering is actually the term that she uses. So here we have a still only from a video that would go like mandala, turning in all directions. And it's a circle rotating in both directions, showing both images of found plastic waste and diagrams referring to the molecular fusion between plastic waste and the human body. So I would leave this out and I would go back to Sonia. And this has actually also, Sonia was giving a very impressive presentation in the Camille Diaries conference, which I show you a few minutes. And we invited her for the Camille Diaries with this very, very interesting project that she produced in 2018 for the love of corals. And Sonia, French artist based in London, central to Sonia's artistic work are the thematic fields of ecologies of becoming with and the imagination of consequences. The research-led practice of Sonia Levy considers shifting modes of engagement with more than human worlds in light of prevailing earthly precarity. Her work operates at the intersection of art and science, a co-becoming of practices tending to the reviving of multi-species worlds. In her project For the Love of Corals, shown here, and we showed it in Berlin as a two-channel video installation, the artist composed a filmic oeuvre about an outstanding scientific care project, and that has to do with the Ornament Museum in London. In the museum's basement, we have to be precise, this outstanding project is taking place in the basement of the museum, in the lab. A team of marine biologists and aquarists have begun growing corals in captivity, the first team in the world to successfully spawn corals in labs. And I think now we have a lot of reference point here, right? With the artists, with the ones that I chose for today's talk. So climate change is very much, let's put it the other way around. The death of corals is a very interesting indicator of the drastic climate change. And so it's actually interesting that Sonia, and that was for many months, 1 or 2 years, she followed this project, that she actually focused on these very corals. And we probably know that the coral reef, one of the most biological diverse habitats of our planet, they take up less than 0.1% of the ocean floor and are home to 1/4 of all marine life. This is amazing, right? Humankind depends on these essential ecosystems, so the damage happening to the reefs is affecting livelihoods, as well as countless species in our oceans. So more than half of the world's coral reefs are likely to die within the next 2 decades due to climate change, pollution, and overfishing. And this is then the scientists of the Project Coral at the Ornament Museum have been pioneering research. Before I might finish with my talks on this very project, I wanted to point out that you have here, I hope you can see this with my modest photograph, you have two video screens. So one from the video flat screen on the below, and on top it's a projection. And on top you can see the polyps of the corals from the lab in London. And below you would see cyanotypes by Atkins. And she did one of the first cyanotypes and photographs in the middle of the 19th century. And these cyanotypes of Atkins are also in the library of the Horniman Museum. And so there is a lot of contexts pointing out. And I will show you parts of her talk. But what is also interesting is this moment that she shows on top the static taxonomy, very much in the aesthetics of the 19th century of natural history museums, whereas on the lower screen, she shows then the very outstanding contemporary art, a science project, which she as an artist actually is coming to it. And I know that the team is very grateful for having Sonia, and she was videoing, making a lot of film footage. And I'd like to, I hope you can still see my screen. I would like to share with you from the 8 hours of the symposium a few minutes of Sonia's presentation. It's breathtaking.
Behind the scenes, in the basement of the Ornament Museum and Gardens in London, a team of marine biologists and aquarists have initiated Project Coral, a leading endeavor to breed coral ex situ in specially designed tanks. By mirroring the climatic conditions of the Great Barrier Reef, seasonal temperature changes, solar irradiance, and lunar cycles, within custom-built mesocosms, the team has become the first in the world to induce corals to spawn in a laboratory. I began filming at the Ornament in 2017, viewing this coral restoration project as a case study of new paradigm for multi-species living, environmental conservation, and natural history that are emerging in the wake of the Anthropocene. Corals are canaries in the coal mine. Their bleaching and demise markers of the devastating effects of climate catastrophe. Project Coral is an acknowledgement of the precarity of coral reef assemblages in a warming ocean, an affirmation of life forms' entanglements in this new climatic epoch. But the project is equally a rediscovery of the sensitivities of our planet and its more than human inhabitants. Corals are intricate, multi-species and multi-scale ecological units. They demonstrate how life forms are not separated from their environment, but on the contrary, by their sheer existence, make and constitute an environment for themselves and others, contributing to adjacent ecosystems with complex and far-reaching effects. Project Coral expands that assemblage to include scientists, aquarists, and a range of other human and non-human actors. For the Love of Corals is a cinematic inquiry and artist film developed over the course of a year, filming the daily labor of the team caring for these endangered beings. The relentless attempt to resuscitate corals from capitalism-induced extinctions. The film follows the life cycle of the marine invertebrates in their laboratory tanks, replicating the seasonality and moon phase of an Australian reef in the basement of the Ornament. This short presentation will discuss some of the research that has informed this film project, together with excerpts from the film. 1. Corals as subversive figures in the natural order. The Ornament Museum and Gardens is an anthropology and natural history museum in South London, which also has an aquarium in its basement. Tea trader Frederick John Ornament, founder of the museum, turned his extensive private collection into a public display in 1901 in a gesture to bring the world to Forest Hill. Public museums were part of the Western Modernist project and their collection gathered by the expansions of empires. Specimens collected from afar and wide were placed inside the ordered and categorized space of the museum, promoting a modern scientific view of the world. Natural history museums are displays of the classifying and ordering impulse in search of the universal laws of nature that animated the early days of modern science. Embedded within the Ornament Victorian era natural history collection, nature is presented as a domain of mute materialities, governed by mechanistic principles. The systematic exhibits of the Natural History Gallery present species as extracted from their environment, obfuscating the vital codependency existing between life forms. By contrast, the work of Project Coral makes palpable the tangled web of human, non-human life forms and technologies that the corals depend on for their survival. As a model for the concept of holobionts, a term coined by evolutionary biologist Lynn Margulis, corals are tangible world makers, from their symbiotic relation with an algae dwelling inside their flesh to their skeleton built from bodily secretions, which create shelters from which whole ecologies of living and dying are formed, affecting the productivity of the part of the ocean in which they settle.
I would just stop here, and I hope I made you curious enough to come back. You have here the Camille Diaries symposium on our YouTube channel. And with this, for the last few minutes, I would like to open up as a little premiere. I think the audience here, you are very much the first audience to see our new web archive, which we will launch online in the next few days. So here you are in our new web format. And I just wanted to quickly show you, we have a research section. And what you probably have seen with the artists that I chose, that they are not only into the science and know very much well their fields of interests, from the scientific point of view, but they're also working on the idea, like Sonia just phrased it in her talk for the conference. I mean, what I showed you was not the video, right? It was the conference presentation about the video, that it's about embracing human and more than humans. And it's actually not the separation of nature and culture. So actually the togetherness and the becoming, the interspecies, multi-species entanglements, this is actually a thought which is very dear to all the artists that we are working with. And it would be actually also interesting to look into Sasha Spachal, who we worked with, who is very excellently working with the fungal world. Actually, I just keep it for time reason for my last 1 or 2 minutes. Katharina, is that okay? One minute. I keep it a little bit short, and I just hope I made you curious enough to look into Sasha, to look into our project of the Ideawaagte Panke. And also finally, I would like to invite you to look closely into our Mind the Fungi project, where we worked with Teresa and Farah on fungi, mycelium, algae. And also years back, we worked with Vivian Zhu from China, who had here a 4 months residency working on silkworm and silk production and architecture. So I think at the moment we are just about 48 minutes, and I think I would just come to the end. And thank you very much for your attention.